Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree, and if you're new to this channel, I like to cover my experience with budgeting and other personal finance topics. And in this video, I'm going to be reviewing my 2025 sinking funds. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about how I put all of those sinking funds together that are in my 2025 annual budget. And then I'm going to be talking about how I'm planning to manage the sinking funds. And then I will give a quick sneak peek into my YNAB app to show where those categories exist and where that money is currently sitting in the budget. So in my previous video, I did my 2024 annual budget. And in that video, I explained what an annual budget was for me and how it plays out in my life. And then I showed how I put it together. And so just as a quick recap, for me, an annual budget is just a monthly budget that takes into account annual expenses. So in my 2025 budget, you'll see a lot of smaller numbers, and that is just me putting aside a little bit of money each month for some of the bigger annual expenses that I expect to come my way. I like to budget this way just to have a realistic view of where my money is going throughout the year, and also so that I can have a consistent budget month to month. So instead of one month where maybe I have a bigger expense come out and then I have to cut back in other categories in order to offset that, I instead just try to plan for those expenses in my budget and then live off of a very consistent free spending amount. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I have open in front of me right now is an Excel spreadsheet, and what I've done is kind of categorized all of my sinking funds or annual expenses into a main category and then a subcategory. I then have the amount, the frequency for the transaction, the total annual amount, and then how much I need to put aside each month to make that annual amount. And just as a quick side note, traditionally how a sinking fund works is you'll take some amount of money that you plan to spend, and then you count maybe like the months until you have to make that purchase or spend that money. And then you'll divide the total amount by the number of months that you have left to save. And that would give you a monthly target amount of money to put aside. So for my strategy, it is a little different. I am planning to divide all of my totals by 12 months and making sure that I put aside a certain sum of money to fill all of these sinking funds each month. Okay, so the first category that I'm going to start with is my annual category. So a lot of these are just expenses that come up one time of year, and I've outlined how much I expect to spend on them. So you'll see here that I have TurboTax for $72, Webroot for $96, YNAB for $108, my life insurance policy for $250, my renter's insurance for $144, and then Costco for $60. And then for auto maintenance, I have always just kind of put $100 aside every month, so I put the annual goal as $1,200. And so you can see that in the frequency column, I have everything as 1, and then I've got the annual totals, and then everything divided by 12 to give me that monthly amount. So the next category is birthdays, and for this category, I did go off of historical costs and then just kind of guesstimated a little bit there. So starting off with my daughter's birthday, I looked at how much I spent last year, and then I did tweak it a little bit just to get a more realistic amount that I would expect to spend this coming year. So you can see that the amount that I've put is $300 for a one-time event, and that would come out to $25 a month. So for her birthday, I like to take into account gifts. We typically like to take some of her friends to like a bounce house. Last year, we went as a family to go to the movies. I felt really comfortable with $300 being enough money to kind of take care of some gifts and some fun activities for her birthday. Now, this is kind of funny. I just noticed that I broke out my sister 2 different times. So I do have 2 sisters, and I should have just really done a frequency of 2 here, but I did break them out individually. So I'm estimating about $50 for each of them. I have $150 for my partner, and then $50 for my brother, my mom, and my sister-in-law, all in separate events. And then this last line for miscellaneous is a little different. So now that my daughter's in school, I'm experiencing a lot of birthday parties happening. And so when I originally put this category together, this was well before she started school. So now I'm trying to take into account having a little bit of money put aside so that I can just cover picking up a quick little kid's gift when we go and attend these birthday parties. So in setting up this category, I decided to do about $30 as a limit per occurrence. And then I'm putting a frequency of 5 just to cover me for this year. The next category is for me, and I don't have too much going on when it comes to this category. Of course, I am putting money aside for other things that are gonna be tons of fun this year. So for me specifically, I do like to buy a really good pair of sandals for the summer. And what tends to happen is I get kind of like a solid neutral pair of sandals that I really love. And then I wear them all summer long, and by the end of summer, they kind of retire themselves. So it's always nice to have a little bit of money to buy another pair for the following summer. Now I will say this year I did buy a little bit more of an expensive brand. So I got the Teva brand, and those were about $80. And that's really why I put this sinking fund together, was because when I made that purchase, it felt like a lot of money to make in one purchase. But I'd read so many good reviews about them, and last year we went on a cruise, so I was looking for a sandal that could hold up for long walks, could go in the water, go along the beach, and not really have any issues with the different terrain. And so that puts me at $7 a month to put aside for that. And then the next one is for school, and I'm actually wrapping up my last class this semester. So I'm so excited. I'll be saving $5 a month. But this is just to kind of help with some textbook rentals. They're typically maybe about like $30 for each class. And I was typically taking at least 2 classes a year. So that was how this number was put together. So the next one I have under a category titled event. And so last year I ended up participating in Black Friday. I think the last time I really bought anything during Black Friday was back in 2021. And during that time, I just filled up on a lot of makeup products that I would typically get throughout the year, but on sale. But this past year, I did kind of get swept away with everything, and I covered a lot of those items in my what I spent in a month for November. But I got things like a hard drive, a microphone, and a steam mop, which I'm loving. So I wanted to be more prepared for this coming year and not just ignore it, since it's a great time to get things that maybe I want to get later on in the year, but get them while they're at a discount. So I've gone ahead and put a sinking fund in place for it. And when I was reviewing those past purchases, I did not expect to spend as much as I did this past year. And I just felt that $350 was a really good number to have a little bit of money in my pocket just in case some good deals pop up. Next is everything that has to do with the holidays. So the first is Thanksgiving, and in that same November video, I talked about how I did not have a sinking fund in place for Thanksgiving up to this point. And part of that's just because I've been very blessed in that I'm able to go to different family members' houses in order to do Thanksgiving. But over the past few years, I've been wanting to make my own kind of dishes to bring with me. And my typical grocery budget doesn't cover Thanksgiving expenses. So this year I am targeting $120 and putting $10 aside a month for that. Next is fireworks. So typically we will do fireworks for New Year's and 4th of July. And so I like to give myself a little bit of spending money so we can get some fun fireworks at the fireworks stand. So that has a frequency of 2, totaling $120 for the year. And then the last item in this category is Christmas. Now I feel like for Christmas, there's a couple of ways you could go about creating a sinking fund for this. My preferred method would be to write out everyone's name that you expect to buy gifts for, and then put a dollar amount next to it, and then take the sum total of that, and that would be your sinking fund amount. But for this year, I just pulled together what I spent last year. And since I felt really comfortable with how much I spent last year and it was able to cover everything that I wanted it to cover, I just went ahead and decided to use that number again this year. So that came out to $840 or $70 a month. My next category is my home category. So in this category, I have things like my mailbox. I currently pay that every quarter. So it's $60 4 times a year or $20 a month. And then the next 2 line items are gifts for my daughter's teachers. So we like to do gifts for the holiday break as well as for the summer break. So right now she has 2 teachers, and then we like to get a gift for her bus driver as well. So I budgeted about $25 for each of them, which comes out to $80 for each occurrence. And so we like to give them like gift cards. we usually try to do like a handwritten note. In the past, we've also gotten one of those about me sheets from the teachers. So we try to pick off like what their favorite things are and try to get things that are related to what they like. And actually, just a quick side note, if you are a teacher watching this video, I would love to hear what a great gift idea is for you. So if you've got something in mind or have any good ideas, or maybe there's something in the past that you've received that you really enjoyed, I would love to hear it. So please let me know down in the comments. So my next category is my daughter's category, and this is kind of broken out between a couple of different things. So from my budget, I am currently budgeting $65 a month for her. So the first thing that I'm budgeting for are 3 different types of summer camps. So I am very fortunate to be able to work from home, which helps a lot in the summertime because my daughter is able to stay home and she's able to do some activities in the living room or in her room while I'm working. But I do still like to get her out of the house and do some fun summer activities. So I kind of based all of these costs off of what we spent last year. Last year she did 1 week-long camp at her school. What was really nice about that one was that they had before and after care. So I was able to drop her off before I had to start working and then pick her up once my day was done. So that one's the more expensive $220 option. And they always have like different themes. So one year she went for like a coding camp, and then this last year she went for like a DIY creative camp. The second camp is a Girl Scout camp. So this is actually an evening camp and it happens after 5. So another really nice camp where I can just kind of get off work and then I go and drive her there, and she's there for about 3 hours. And then at the end of the week, they'll show off what they've been working on. And so last year was our first year doing it and it was a ton of fun. And I just don't think you can beat $50 for a week's worth of activities. And then the final camp that we did last year was an acting camp. Now, when I was looking at these, they were insanely expensive, but that is also because they typically run for a couple weeks at a time. But about midsummer, one of the theaters that's nearby ended up running a smaller program, which allowed kids to come from 9 to 12 and do different activities every day. And then on Friday, they got to do a really fun showcase in front of the parents. So my daughter absolutely loved this event. And then I loved being able to see a final performance on Friday. So that one went for $150, which is a little bit on the high end for what you get, but she definitely has a desire for acting. So it also is a little bit more affordable than some of the other options. The next category is school supplies. Now for her first year of school, I thought I would go and buy all the school supplies myself. I will never do that again. I think by the end of it, I had gone to 3 different Targets to get all of the different colored folders. Not only that, I also found out that there are certain online retailers that hike up the price during this time, which is another reason why I was running to different Targets, because they had a bunch of sales going on. So I've just decided to stick to the PTO offering of $100. Next is her gymnastics annual fee, and this is honestly a very small expense, but again, I just wanted to be on top of what I can expect annually, so I went ahead and added this one in. And then lastly, I'm budgeting $100 for clothes for my daughter, and so I have a frequency of 2 times a year. So that would be for winter time and for spring, summertime. The next category is for our new kitten. So I'm currently budgeting $71 a month. And so the sinking funds that I have set up are a vet visit for $250 for 1 time a year, heartworm medication at $100 2 times a year, and then pet insurance for $400 at 1 time a year. For my dog, I'm currently putting aside $88 a month for him, and this is pretty similar to our kitten, so I'm estimating $250 for a vet visit, $100 for a heartworm medication 2 times a year. I have the same $400 for pet insurance. And then the big difference here is I went ahead and included boarding. Thankfully, I've never really had to board him in the past when I've gone out of town. but I do want to be prepared just in case that is what I have to do. So I just put together a really rough estimate of $200 one time a year for that expense. Ooh, and then the last category is probably the one that I am most excited about. And this one is all about vacations. So this year is a little different in how I'm doing vacations. The last 2 years, my sisters and I went on like a girls' cruise trip, usually towards the end of the summer, right when prices were starting to drop. And this year we kept looking and looking, and we just didn't really find a good fit for another cruise vacation. So we're kind of changing things up. Some other changes are that my best friend just moved to another state. So now I'm trying to factor in a trip to go and see her. And then my family actually lives in Colorado. So I'm trying to budget at least one trip to go and see them this year. And then in February, I'm actually going to go on a girls' trip. So I wanted to make sure I had that factored in here as well. So the first 2 line items are for flights, both to go see my best friend and my family. And looking at the amounts, I'm feeling a little nervous, not gonna lie. I think I kind of underdid it on those. So I may have to revisit this and tweak it a little bit. Now I will say I feel like I also overestimated on the next line item, which is my family trip. So instead of doing a cruise vacation with my sisters, I think what we've decided instead is that they're going to fly down and stay with me for about a week. And we're gonna kind of do like a road trip around the state to go and visit some other family members and just do some other fun activities that are a little bit closer to home. And so for that trip, I really wanted to give myself a good amount of money, but I still think I kind of went overboard. So that $1,000 may be able to help me with the flights that I'm gonna take. And then following that, I did guesstimate how much I may spend going to visit my friend and my family. So I put $300 for Maryland and $500 for Colorado. And then for my upcoming girls trip, this is a similar trip that I took last year. So I just pulled up my YNAB app and looked at how much I spent last year on the trip and kind of came up with a number that I felt really comfortable with. And so that'll cover my portion of the Airbnb, some meals, and some drinks. So that is all of my sinking funds for 2025 and how I put those together. Next, I wanted to show how I'm planning to manage my sinking funds this year. So I should note that in previous years, I used to just have a general bucket, especially for a lot of those smaller amounts in my YNAB app. And it was just kind of called a general sinking fund. And so I would put a little bit over $100 every month. And then as certain transactions happened, whether it was my renter's insurance or my life insurance policy, I would just categorize those transactions to that bucket. But this year, I really wanted a visual way to see where I was for each sinking fund and make adjustments as necessary. So what I went ahead and did was I purchased a sinking fund tracker from Etsy. And so when setting up the sinking fund tracker, I just kind of laid out all of my different sinking funds and the goal amounts from my Excel spreadsheet. And then I looked at my sinking funds in my YNAB and put in the starting amounts for each of them. And then what was really cool about this, because I never actually looked at it from an annual perspective, but as you can see, my total goal amount is $10,158 for this year. So in the sinking fund tracker, there's a transactions page where every month I plan to put in all of my transactions. So for example, I calculated $848 as my total for how much I'm putting aside in my sinking funds. And so when I go to this transactions page, you can see that for January, I did put aside that much money. And so now I've got this really pretty dashboard that I can open and look at and kind of see where I'm at for each category. So I'm really excited to be managing my sinking funds in this way. Now we'll take a little bit of practice just because as I spend money and as transactions come in for different sinking funds, I'll just have to make sure to come back to my Excel spreadsheet and log those. But what's nice is I should be able to do a tie out between what's in my spreadsheet and what's currently in YNAB in each of the categories. So that is all of my sinking funds for 2025. If you found this interesting or valuable, please hit the like button. And then if you'd like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing. If you have any questions about my sinking funds or about budgeting in general, please let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for joining me today.